But moving on, for the younger generation, the cost of living crisis presents a lot of concerns. Will I be able to pay my rent and energy bills? Will buying a home ever be possible? What impact will all of this have on my future? Can I afford to have children? Well, for one think tank founder, it's all got too much. Ryan Shorthouse founded the Cameronite group Bright Blue in 2014. The aim was to defend and improve liberal conservative society. But he's now stepping down as he thinks the Conservative Party has failed his generation and that millennials are stuck in limbo due to the current economic situation. I spoke to him earlier and he started off by telling me where exactly he feels his generation has been let down the most.
Yeah, well, if you think about people who came of age and entered the labour market in the late noughties, they were the sort of oldest millennials. They've had 12 years of Tory rule. A lot of them now in their 30s are in this state of limbo if they don't have parental support, because the things that Tories care about and think is the kind of path to a good life, housing, starting a family, a lot of people who don't have that baby boomer parental support just feel that they can't move to the next stage of their life cycle because owning a property is just so much. Even renting now is very high. The childcare costs are particularly punishing. And, if you look at the impact on wages of having children, particularly still for women, it can be very detrimental. And, a lot of women of millennial generation have obviously gone to university, are prioritising their professional careers. To have children still it can be such a detriment on their kind of long-term earnings and career prospects.
So, Ryan, what's changed? I mean, you first founded Bright Blue back in during the David Cameron's leadership. How does that sort of conservatism compare to what we're seeing today? I say what's changed or what hasn't changed?
Well, I would say that, there's been kind of two stages of modernisation for the Conservative Party, which Bright Blue has been at the centre of. That first stage, which Cameron really pushed, was kind of being comfortable with the modern world, being supportive of the diversity that exists, for example, on gay rights, on ethnic diversity, making the Conservative Party much more comfortable with modern Britain. And then I think as you went into the kind of Theresa May and Boris Johnson period, and I think some of this was helped by the vote for Brexit, was reaching to people on modest incomes, particularly in northern parts of England and Wales, who for a long time had been put off from voting Tory because there was this perception that Thatcher had really decimated mining communities and caused so much economic pain for such a long time. Brexit changed that, and the whole focus of Theresa May and Boris Johnson, this whole kind of levelling up focus, I think was a kind of next stage of modernisation, particularly since the mini budget, which was almost, vice signalling about supporting very wealthy earners. The top, for example, the cut in the top rate of income tax, which was sort of the big out of the rabbit announcement during that mini budget, I think overnight almost changed, kind of reverted back to what a lot of people fear, which is that the Conservative Party is the party of the rich. But also, I think we're back to a place where, we're having austerity again. Some of that, of course, largely is based on global economic trends, but it's also down to some of the policies that the Conservative Party have introduced. And so I just don't think people will forgive the Tories for this new round of austerity. It feels like we're just going back to where we were, and the country is not moving forward. We're back in recession, we're back in austerity, we're back to high rates of inflation. And it just feels that we're not moving forward, and the Tory government is tired and doesn't have new ideas.
Interesting that you mentioned Brexit there, because it's suddenly started to sort of filter back onto the news agenda in the last few weeks, and in particular the sort of mooting of this Switzerland-style deal. Do you think that decision, that referendum, and our leaving the EU is one of the things that significantly impacted the particular generation that you represent?
I think the type of Brexit that has been pursued, which admittedly is quite a hard Brexit, has been detrimental. Of course, we know that most young people, the majority, did not vote for Brexit. but it was a democratic decision. We had to make the best of that decision, but the government pursued quite a hardline one. And logically, if you're making trade less frictionless, then that's going to have an economic impact. We're now seeing evidence, including from the OBR, that this is having an impact on economic growth. I originally voted for Remain, but respected the referendum result. But I just feel that we've kind of gone down a path which is quite a hardline Brexit, which wasn't particularly compromising and has been a huge opportunity cost, really. That's why I voted for Remain in the first place. I don't think we've seen huge benefits from Brexit. And I would say as well that the pandemic and the war in Eastern Europe, is obviously having an impact on the economy, but it's almost kind of masked the detrimental impact that Brexit has been having.
Ryan, a think tank like yours would surely represent the future of the Conservative Party. It can't always be dictated by a bunch of people, in their maturity. Did you find that you were listened to?
We have been listened to, particularly on issues around the environment. We've kind of made the weather on that. I think, the first centre-right think tank to call for net zero emissions target in law. On immigration policy, kind of post-Brexit regime for workers and students is something, a lot of policies that we've advocated, the government have adopted. And certainly on some issues around higher education and the welfare system, the government have adopted some of our ideas, but nowhere near enough that we would like. And, part of the reason for stepping down is also that I've been there 8 years, and 8 years running an organisation is a long time, and you need new people in it, fresh talent with new vision and energy. And I think this also applies to the Conservative government. As I said, it feels tired. It's not really offering a kind of new, fresh prospectus of policies. And actually, if Rishi Sunak used the opportunity when he was Prime Minister to recruit some young, experienced, talented ministers, and there's lots of them, into that cabinet, if he had used the opportunity to promote some of that young blood, I think that would have been good politics in terms of presenting a new image to the country. Instead, he kind of basically decided to shift the deck chairs around, people who have been at the top table for a long time, just in sort of, new posts. And a lot of those people around the top table obviously were around that top table when some of the bad decisions were made around the mini budget. We should have in this country collective cabinet responsibility. So I feel it was politically short-sighted for Rishi not to promote some of those more talented younger members into the cabinet. After all, he himself went on a very rapid elevation through the cabinet, eventually to Chancellor and now to Prime Minister.
Just finally though, Ryan, I mean, Keir Starmer said yesterday that Labour is all about business. They love business. They welcome business. They want to encourage business. And, there were some very unflattering comparisons made between the reception that Rishi Sunak got the day before and the reception that Keir Starmer got yesterday. Are you still a Conservative?
Well, I set up a think tank which was committed to liberal conservatism, and our mission is to defend and improve liberal society. They're my principles. They've always been my principles. Looking at the Labour Party, it does look like there's a kind of shift towards them. The polling seems to suggest that we're sort of on the way to a Labour government in 2 years' time. There's some people in the Tory party who think austerity will play to their favour, that austerity politics is good for Tories because they're the ones that make the difficult decisions. Labour always overspend. I think considering what's happened, particularly in recent months, I think the austerity that we're now going through, the Tories will be blamed for that and it will stick, just as the financial crisis in 2008 was blamed on the Labour Party and it stuck for a long time. And I think this very difficult economic situation that we now find ourselves in, people will blame the Tories for a long time for that. But, admittedly, I don't think Labour are necessarily offering a really exciting original policy prospectus as well. It just feels at the moment that politics generally is not offering something exciting for younger generations.
That was former head of Conservative, well, actually not former head, he's still acting head for the next 6 months of Conservative think tank Bright Blue, Ryan Shorthouse.